This is the Crimson Corner with Bill Riley.
Walks it into the end zone for a Utah touchdown.
Your source for the best insight on everything happening in and around Utah athletics. Now, here's the host of the Crimson Corner, the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley.
Welcome into this week's edition of the Crimson Corner. I'm Bill Riley, the play-by-play voice of the University of Utah. Thanks to our friends at Advanced Window Products for sponsoring this podcast each and every week. Utah's #1 and homegrown window company. It's Advanced Window Products. We have got a great show. This is the time of year where, as George Costanza would say, worlds are colliding. Worlds are colliding. And we're not going to kill Independent George here today. We've got football, we've got basketball, we've got volleyball, we've got everything happening. And oh yeah, game day is coming to Salt Lake City again. So we've got a lot to talk about. Got a very special guest on today's edition of the Crimson Corner as well. A Utah legend and now Utah head basketball coach Alex Jensen is going to swing by to talk to us today about the season, the team building, why he loves coaching, all of that good stuff will be coming up today here on the Crimson Corner. But let's start with football. Let's start with last weekend. I think we all knew Utah football needed it. I called it a palate cleanser at the end of the broadcast on Saturday night. Utah just absolutely, positively running over Colorado, 53-7 on Saturday night. It was a bounce-back win. It was the Byrd Ficklin game. Let's be real honest. After the disappointment the week before in Provo, Utah football needed that. Utah football fans needed that. It was just a collective exhale. Utah, that was as good and as dominant as they have been in a number of years. And we got our first real glimpse of Byrd Ficklin. Yeah, we had seen Byrd Ficklin play a little bit in kind of mop-up time for Devin Dampier or come in here and there for a play, but we hadn't seen a game where it was Byrd Ficklin's ball and he was going to run the show. This kid is 18 years old. He left high school in Muskogee, Oklahoma early in January to come to Salt Lake City. He had one other D1 scholarship offer last year. That was Texas State. And he chose to come to Utah. And guess what? That was a good decision for him, and that was a good decision for the Utes. He got the start Saturday night for the injured Devin Dampier, and he was terrific. He started a little slow, handing the ball off on the first play to Daniel Bray. Oh, and then he showed off. 63 yards on the second play of the game, up the sideline into the end zone. That was 63 of his 151 yards rushing, and he just set the tone early. I don't know if you guys noticed it. I noticed it. Scott Mitchell and I talked about it on the broadcast slide too. The offense just had a different feel Saturday night, and maybe it was coming after the slog in Provo the week before, but there was some juice in that offense, man. And I'm going to give Byrd Ficklin credit for that because he is a true freshman. And he came in and started a game against, they're not the world beaters. They're not BYU or Texas Tech or ASU, but Colorado was a solid team coming in, and Utah made him look silly. And Byrd Ficklin was the big reason for that. He also passed for 140 yards and 2 touchdowns. He didn't have the greatest accuracy numbers. I think he was 6 of 16, but Kyle Whittingham said, he was 10 of 22. He was 6 of 16, I think, in the first half. He said he's a lot more accurate than that. But the bottom line was Utah needed a win. They needed a get-back and get-right game, and they got just that. And it was the offense leading the way and the defense playing downhill all night long. I'm not sure Morgan Scalley ever let Caden Salter and that CU offense get comfortable. He dialed up the pressure time after time after time. In fact, Kyle Whittingham said at a luncheon I was emceeing on Monday, that was the highest pressure rate, the highest blitz rate in his career here at Utah. They blitzed more times Saturday night against Colorado than they had his entire career, 21 years here. More pressure on the quarterback via blitz. 70% of the time, they brought a blitz against Caden Salter. They came up with 7 sacks. They were fantastic. And hey, they also forced a turnover, something they hadn't. This was a stat. My guy Dave Spatafor, who's my stats man on football broadcasts, sent me this before the game. He said, Bill, you're not going to believe this, but the Utah defense has not forced a turnover since the second quarter of the Texas Tech game. Think about that for just a minute. Utah's defense has been solid this year. At times, you look at the stats, they've been really good, top half of the Big 12. But they had not forced a turnover since the second quarter of the Texas Tech game. Well, that changed. Teo Johnson got his first interception in a while, and Utah got its first turnover defensively in 4.5 games. Here's the part that I loved even more than any of that other stuff. The special teams. The special teams were all over. They were special. They faked a punt, converted it. They blocked a punt. Jackson Benny again. Dylan Curtis knocked through 3 or 4 field goals. Monte Carvalho, he had 4 or 5 good, real good punt returns to average 12 yards a punt return. It was the best I think we've seen in an all-around performance, offense, defense, and special teams in a couple of seasons. And like I said, Utah needed that to get back, get right, feel good about things. Here's a few numbers, just a few more numbers to back up how dominant they were on Saturday night. 422 yards, the most since the Stanford game back in 2021. If you'll remember that game, that was a game Utah had Tavion Thomas, TJ Pledger, and Mekhi Bernard all go over 100 yards. 422 is the 7th most in school history. 2 100-yard rushers. The first time since 2021 against Stanford that Utah's had 2 100-yard rushers. 587 total yards. The most since Colorado in 2022 when they had 662 yards. And the 140 yards given up to Colorado, the fewest since Arizona State in 2023 when the Devils got 83. As I said, it was a dominant all-around performance that Utah needed in the worst way. 3 big takeaways from that game. My 3 takeaways. Byrd Ficklin brings a dimension to the offense that's just different. It was an energy that was palpable in the stadium, in the broadcast booth. If you were there, you saw it and you felt it. Takeaway number 2. Pressure makes cowards of us all. Ask Caden Salter. That young man is a really good, accomplished quarterback, and he looked lost Saturday night. Morgan Scalley dialing up blitzes on 70% of the snaps, 7 sacks, 13 tackles for loss. My 3rd takeaway, a couple of passing targets are beginning to emerge now for Utah. Ryan Davis has been there all year. Dallin Bentley has been there all year. But the freshman from Las Vegas, J.J. Buchanan, and by the way, he's not a tight end anymore. He's now a wide receiver. He's emerging. He had a touchdown on a great pass from Ficklin. And Larry Simmons, back-to-back weeks with touchdowns. He got one against BYU. He had one on a beautiful throw in the back of the end zone from Ficklin. He's beginning to emerge as well. So the pass game, which has been kind of limited to a couple of guys, now beginning to expand just a little bit. How about my game ball for Saturday night? There's only one choice. It's Byrd Ficklin. The big question now is, when will we see him again? Will we see him this week against Cincinnati? I don't know. Kyle Whittingham said this week, Devin's still our number 1 guy. And, as long as he's healthy, he's going to go. They'll find a way to get Byrd on the field. But if Devin isn't healthy, if Devin isn't 100%, will we see Byrd Ficklin against Cincinnati? That's to be determined still this week. And speaking of Cincinnati, this is a good football team. Here come the Bearcats. They're coming to Salt Lake City Saturday night, and game day's coming too. We'll get to that in a minute. First ever meeting between Utah and Cincinnati. How about that? Never in either program's histories have they met. First ever meeting on the gridiron. Cincinnati's good now. This is a good team. Scott Satterfield, their head coach, is in his 3rd season there. They're 7-1 on the season. The funny thing is they're only ranked number 17. There's a couple of Big 12 teams that have been slept on, and Cincinnati's one of those teams. The other one's Houston. They just jumped into the rankings for the first time. They're good this year, too. But back to Cincinnati. 7-1 and 5-0 on the season. Their only loss on the year was to Nebraska. In the opening week, I think it was week 0, in fact, in Kansas City at Arrowhead Stadium. It was technically a home game for Cincinnati. I don't know how that works. Brendan Sorsby, their quarterback, threw a pick in the end zone with 34 seconds left to play. They lost 20-17. By the way, that's the only pick he's thrown this year. He's got 20 touchdowns and 1 interception this year, Sorsby does. They're tied for first place in the Big 12 with BYU. Those two are the only undefeated teams left. Not Utah, not Arizona State, not Texas Tech. It's Cincinnati and BYU, who are both 5-0 in conference play. Who are these Bearcats? Scott Satterfield, I mentioned, 3rd season. He's 15-17, but they're markedly better this year. He was a really good coach at App State before he was at Cincinnati. Brendan Sorsby, their quarterback. Numbers, impressive. 1,843 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's only been sacked twice. And he's also run for 425 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's 6'3", 235. He's a tank. He's a big dude. They've got 3 runners over 400 yards rushing. They've got 4 receivers over 300 yards receiving. Their offense is a top 5 offense in the Big 12. Their defense, it's okay. It's not great, but it's not terrible. It's a bottom 6 or 7 defense. But here's the thing, and I always like to do comparing and contrasting. Cincinnati is having, and maybe this is why they're only ranked 17th. Their opponent's record on the year is 18-21. So they've got a record, they're losing, their opponents have a losing overall record, and their Big 12 opponents are 7-17. That tells you a little bit about maybe the competition they've played. This will be the best team they've played this year and the toughest environment in which they've come in. And it's an 8:15 kickoff, third 8:15 kickoff this year for Utah. But that could play to Utah's advantage. One, we all know that Rice-Eccles Stadium is just different. It is at night. It's different at night, and at 8:15 at night, we've seen it. Saturday night, it was different. Colorado against Arizona State, even with the weather, it was loud. It was different. Plus, the Bearcats are going to be, their body clock, it's going to be 10:15 Eastern time when that game kicks off. So I think there's an advantage to this 8:15 kickoff for Utah. It's a really late kickoff for Cincinnati. As I mentioned, game day is in town. ESPN Game Day will be in town at President's Circle, kicking off Saturday night at 8:15. They'll be there all morning long. We'll see how that goes. Reese Davis, Pat McAfee, Nick Saban, Desmond Howard, Kirk Herbstreit, Stanford Steve. They'll all be in town. You'll be able to see them set up, go out and see them Saturday morning at President's Circle, and we'll see how that goes. So I'm excited. It's to be very fair, it's a very long climb and a very difficult climb for Utah to get back to the top of the Big 12. All they can worry about right now is winning 5 games in a row. That's all they can worry about. All they can worry about are what's in front of them. And they won that first game last week. And the schedule on the back end for Utah is much more manageable than that front end schedule. So you can't worry about all the chaos, especially with 4 games remaining, including this weekend's game. You can't worry about all that chaos. All you have to worry about is winning the game that is in front of you, and that is Cincinnati. And I think it's going to be a really good matchup coming up on Saturday night. I'm excited to be there. I'm excited to call it. I mentioned ESPN will have the broadcast. Myself, Scott Mitchell, Stevenson Sylvester will have the radio broadcast with our pregame coverage beginning around 6 o'clock with an 8:15 kickoff. And the weather, unlike the game a couple of weeks ago against Arizona State, it'll be chilly, but it should be a great night. Football weather at Rice-Eccles Stadium coming up on Saturday night. So it should be a ton of fun. We'll have a little bit more on that coming up in just a bit. But coming up, as I mentioned, worlds are colliding right now. You've got volleyball season and soccer season coming to an end. You've got football right square in the middle of everything. And basketball begins next Monday at the University of Utah. The Utah men and the Utah women both open Monday night. Utah men open against San Jose State. Utah women against Sioux Falls. Well, we're going to talk some Runnin Utes basketball. There's a lot of excitement around the program right now because of the man that's now in charge of the program. He knows what it takes to win at Utah. He knows what it takes to win, period. So we're going to catch up with Alex Jensen straight ahead here on Crimson Corner to get his thoughts on the team and where they're at and how he's approaching the season. All that coming up. Stay with us here on Crimson Corner.
Here's another insider interview on the Crimson Corner podcast.
Really happy that our next guest has made some time for us today. It's a busy time of year for him, so I really appreciate him making some time here at Crimson Corner today. He's the head coach of Utah basketball. Runnin Utes open up Monday night against the San Jose State Spartans at the John M. Huntsman Center at 7 o'clock. Alex Jensen comes by. I feel like you and I have talked like 17 different times over the last 3 different months, whether at luncheons and at functions or whatever, but thanks for doing this again. And this is a little bit more long form so we can kind of have more extended conversations. But how are things?
Good. We're getting there. We just had played our second exhibition game, and those are great, I think. Those have been good for us. For me, too, coming back to college. But, playing Reno and Oregon, you kind of find a lot of. I think it helps us with the direction we want to go.
So, yeah, we talked before the Reno exhibition game here at home, and you're like, I just want to see these guys play against somebody that's not wearing a Utah practice jersey. And they were saying the same thing, too. The guys were like, man, we cannot wait to get out there. So you get that game, come up just a little short against Nevada, playing without Don McHenry that night. And then, as you mentioned, last Friday night, you go up to Eugene, play a really good Oregon team in an exhibition game, lose there. But, wins and losses in exhibition games aren't the important thing. It's finding out about your team. So 2 exhibitions in your back pocket, opener a couple of days away. What do you know about these guys?
They've both been good because, we had, Baba Carfe got injured. He's out for the year. So then, we kind of had a vision in our mind of the team we had and where we're going to go. So then he didn't play, obviously, in either game. So Reno, Don McHenry didn't play. So you kind of, it was good for everybody else. But then he played in Oregon, in Oregon, good team. Nevada was too. They both, different styles. But I think we kind of figure out how our pieces fit together better. And I think, especially in Oregon, I think we, guys were a little amped up and a little antsy. So hopefully we got some of that out of our system. But a lot to learn, like a ton to learn. A lot of film. I think all of us probably watch each game over, 2 or 3 times and you see something new. But definitely helps with the direction.
How do you feel about, you said you were going to use these exhibitions to kind of figure out who plays well together, rotations, if you will. Do you feel like after 2 exhibition games, you have a feel for maybe a starting 5 that works or first couple of guys off the bench, or is that going to be a work in progress as we go here during the year?
No, I think, it's definitely work in progress, but I think it narrows it down. I think, I told our guys, the starting lineup, it might change by, not every game. You'll have a narrow it down and have a rotation. But I think like how guys play well with each other. He's always like to have multiple ball handlers on the floor, and and Sadhu's out right now. Not sure when he'll come back, but he was another guy that could pass and dribble. So it's a work in progress. But you definitely see how kind of a solidifying a starting 5, and then it changes too by the team you play, especially when we get into conference play.
You want to have somebody on ball with the ball in their hands that you can trust, that can get you into what you want to run, that can kind of lead you out there. Terrence Brown seems to be one of those guys. I know you've mentioned Don McHenry as being one of those guys. Abby, your freshman from Finland, has gotten some run there. How are you feeling about the point guard spot and the guys that are handling the ball and getting you into it? Do they have a grip on what you and the staff want to do?
Yeah, no, I think a good example is if you look at the first half and the second half against Oregon, we had a lot of unforced turnovers, right? We didn't score for, I think it was 7-8 minutes against Oregon, but like I said, we were amped up. But Terrence, TB, did a great job slowing down, keeping his dribble, and just the game slowed down for him. Both he and Don are coming off years where they scored 20 points a game. And, we need you to score, but first of all, we need you to set up our offense. And they've done a good job adjusting to that. And then Abby's, I think, it's always helpful. Going back all my years of coaching, it's always good to have multiple ball handlers on the floor.
You mentioned Bob Carfe, the big fella from Western Kentucky. He was going to be one of your rim protectors. He was going to be one of those guys for you. Obviously, he suffered the season-ending injury this fall before the season began. So what are you doing in the front court? How are you protecting the rim right now? I know Josh Hayes is a young man that has some length and might be able to do that. James Okonkwo is not what you would necessarily call a rim protector at his size, but he's a big physical presence. So how are you guys attacking that front court and defensively and rim protecting and things like that?
Yeah, good question. We're going to do it by committee. But, James is a 5th-year senior, and he has the experience. Josh and Kendall, I don't think we envision them playing as much as that they're going to have to now with Baba being out. But they both have made big strides and have had moments. And, it's kind of hard to, thrust them into the limelight and expect the big minutes from them. But I'm excited because both of them, I think, have improved a lot, have a long way to go, especially, as you get into conference, it gets physical, and Josh actually did a good job, just like TB. In the second half, I thought he responded well to guarding Biddle. I think it was Biddle.
Nate Biddle, yeah.
Nate Biddle, who's a 7-foot handful at times. But, I think with experience, that's the goal. I think we've gotten better. we'll continue to get better.
It's an interesting path, Alex, because you guys in the spring know you're going to have an entirely new team. For you guys, it's certainly new, but bringing in a full new roster with the exception of a Keanu Dawes who played quite a bit last year for Utah. So you go out and you find these guys, you recruit them, you bring them together. Then you have the summer with them where you're getting more time to play and coach and things like that, installing culture and system. And now you get the fall and you've had some exhibitions. So you're kind of at all these different junctures. So how different are things from April and May when you were bringing these guys in to where things are now?
And I'll say this too, Bill. It's not only just them, it's myself. Like there's an adjustment. The whole, the practice before we've got to play our first game was new to me. Like, in the NBA, there's not as much practice, but, just the staff. The 2 exhibition games were good for our staff because the flow of a college game is much different than an NBA game. So I think there's a lot to be said for that too. But I think I use the word narrow. I think it makes it easier. And I've been very, kind of satisfied with the progress we made. There's a lot more to be had. And, it's actually, that's the kind of the fun part as a coach, and also the miserable part, right, that you enjoy is trying to figure those things out. But, now with the injuries and whatnot, like we expect a lot more from everybody else.
So I've got to ask, you played collegiately, you coached early in your career collegiately, but the majority of the last 15 years have been on the pro side of it, whether in the D-League or in the NBA. And it's different. You don't have as much practice time. It's not as much hardcore install coaching. It's a lot of tweaking and working with guys on their individual skill sets. So how has that adjustment been for you as you're doing a lot more coaching and a lot more teaching of these guys than maybe you did at the pro level?
Yeah, no, it's reminding me back to my playing days and my coaching days. And, and I think college basketball is in an interesting point right now. It's kind of a, in between, and there's a lot of aspects that's like the G League or the D League. It's kind of like Europe, roster building in a way, and there, a few aspects from the NBA, but it's a completely different game than the NBA. Like just the spacing, and it drives me crazy to figure out why it is necessarily. But there's a lot more teaching, and the one thing I think I've really tried to do is not get ahead of myself with anything I do. Like you build it slow because you got to build that, like you say, culture or the foundation. There's things that no matter who's on the roster or what team I have that we're going to do. Like teams that have in the past at Utah that have been successful that have done.
How much do you find yourself pulling an Eric Daniels or a Chill aside saying, okay, these guys have been in college coaching, Eric for sure, and Chill a little bit more too than you have recently. Or maybe they're pulling you aside saying, hey, Alex, maybe we ought to do it a little bit more this way, at least for now, while we get these guys up to speed.
No, I from day one, I've encouraged all those guys to say, if you think it, say it. If you can say it in our meetings, you got to be able to say it, in front of the group in a film session or practice. But lean on them a lot. And I'm thrilled with my staff, and the different backgrounds are great. And that's been a fun part too, like us getting used to each other and coming together, and everybody feeling free to be that one dissenter on an idea. And that's been good. That's one thing I've tried to cultivate.
Well, when you put the staff together, obviously you want guys that you know and you trust, but was there aspects of different guys, like Martin has this, Chill has this, Eric has this? Was there something about that you were looking for from each guy to add to a coaching staff? Or was it more just about the relationships and knowing these guys?
No, I think, it kind of was like one step at a time. Chill was the first. Chill has, like you mentioned, a great history in college basketball. Has been successful at multiple schools. Like he does it, and we always joke that Chill knows everybody. And the next guy was Wes. I mean, he's often reminds everybody not to call me coach because he's not. But I think that he's been around basketball. He has ideas, but at the same time, part of having a general manager is it kind of lets myself and the other coaches kind of focus more on the coaching part of it. No, and Eric, he spent most of his career in college, and Martin, it's kind of a different aspect, and which is actually, I think, fitting for the way the college game is today. But I think, the relationships first and how they mesh together. I think we try to do the same thing with our roster.
Alex Jensen with us here on Crimson Corner, brought to us by our friends at Advanced Window Products. We're talking about the Runnin Utes in the season and everything else. How about you? I mean, do you take a step back at any point in time now that you're back here? And do you ever have a moment and kind of looking around saying, wow, I'm back here in Salt Lake City, coaching at my alma mater, sitting in an office that didn't exist when I was here as a player. Have you had any of those moments just kind of along the way?
Oh, yeah, every day. There's plenty of suppressed memories that have come up since I've been back too. But it's a good feeling because like I had a great time here. And the one thing that's really dawned on me is not just my time here, but like just the history of the Huntsman Center and Utah basketball as a whole.
When people talk about wanting to go back to the past, I kind of cringe just a little bit because I say that because the game is so much different now than it was. I know you hear that all the time. Alex was part of our winning ways back when Rick coached, and Rick did this and that. But the game has evolved so much more. So when people come to you with that, what's kind of your response? Yes, we want to get back to maybe a winning way and culture, but the way we played then or the way the game was then, it's not coming back.
Oh yeah, it's different. It's like the argument of the greatest of all time, right? Like you don't want to. It's hard to compare eras, but the two things. First, despite the era or how things have changed, like the core, you still need to have those core principles amongst your team, but it has changed. Like it's fast moving. The recruiting and everything starts earlier. The money obviously changes it a whole bit, and and I think it's evolving so fast. There's just more questions than answers right now, and hopefully that'll happen sooner rather than later. Just the questions on how you put a team together, what you can do and what you can't do.
The money is clearly a thing that people focus on, players focus on, agents focus on. How do you, when you're recruiting or building, separate the money from who wants to be here, who wants to be part of this, who wants to build, who wants to play basketball with us?
Yeah, no, you've heard this line plenty of times, but I start with my staff, and we all had jobs. Everybody had a good job. We wanted to be here, and I think that I say it all the time. Like with the kids we recruit, they have to like it, they have to love it and enjoy it, and they have to want to come here. Like I don't want it to be a bidding war, and then a kid chooses us because we pay him the most. And I think it's a lot easier, to raise the money to keep a kid here, to have that continuity, than to go out and try to get as much money as you can and throw a team together and try to hit it out of the park in 1 year.
The one thing that is a constant, and I don't know if it was when you guys played, but all these kids want to play on the next level. Whether it's the NBA, that's certainly everybody's goal, or it's the G League, or it's overseas in Europe. These kids want to keep playing basketball, and they want to be paid to play basketball. And I think one of the common themes I heard when talking to your team, and I've talked to them a bunch this fall and this summer, is Alex Coach Jensen coached at that level. He knows what it takes to get us to this level. I think there's a lot of trust from your players, this team that you have here, in you and your staff, to help get them to that next level. Is that a selling point for you and your staff?
Yeah, no, obviously it's a selling point, because when I talk about myself, obviously the last 15 years have been that. And I think pretty much every day, like I'll be reminded of a player or a team in the NBA and why some guys made it and some guys didn't make it. And it's usually when you're 18, 19, it's not what you think it is. And I think the realization of how hard it is to make it, it's a lot of, health, timing, but doing it the right way. And, the one thing I often tell them is, I can tell you this, like if you're going to get drafted, most likely you're going to have to play against a star or like a high-paid guy. They don't need somebody to necessarily come in and, take over, right? You need somebody to be able to play with that guy and lighten the star or the max player's load. I think they realize that, but I don't think they get told that too often.
I would bet as a coach, when you were on that level, and I'm sure you've got examples of it, you loved it when a guy came in that was not super heralded. Maybe he was a street free agent. Maybe he was a guy that had played in the D League or the G League or overseas, and then earned his way onto the roster and then stayed on that roster. and you saw them kind of develop into a player at that level, somebody that wasn't a lottery pick or a first-round pick or heralded as an All-American out of college. That has to be something that when you were coaching either with the Jazz or the Mavs or wherever it was, that gave you great satisfaction.
Oh, yeah. When we were in Eugene, and there was a player, Brian Conklin, that we recruited at St. Louis that came to the game. And, I hadn't been to Eugene since Coach Majerus and I went on a home visit there. But you know what? Like, he just finished playing, had a 10-plus year career overseas, and nobody would have guessed it. I wouldn't have guessed it. But that was a great reminder, because great kid, worked his butt off, got better and better, defied the odds. And, I've been fortunate enough to be around a handful of players like that in the D League and the NBA. And I love it, because he proved me wrong. I remember when he was done with his college career, I was encouraging him, the D League's probably not the best thing for you. And I was, you might want to think about, okay, if not basketball, what else? But you know what? He just finished playing, had a great career. And it is satisfying. And I think that's and it was a great reminder, because that's the type of kid I think that we want to get to Utah. And that the success, you go back, I mean, think about the Jazz, but you go back to the success of the Utes for decades. I think most of it has been with that kid that overachieves. He's not the highest recruited kid. And it's very satisfying. That's the fun part about it.
Well, I think of three guys in recent memory here at the University of Utah that are all playing in the NBA right now. They were under-recruited guys. Nobody knew who Jakob Poeltl was when he was coming out of Austria, but they found him, and once Utah got on him a little bit, everybody else then glommed on, but he stayed here. DeLon Wright was a very lightly heralded kid out of San Francisco City College. His brother was in the NBA, but DeLon wasn't really heralded. All-American, still playing in the NBA. And then there's Kyle Kuzma. Utah found him out of a prep school back east. I think he was a 2-star athlete. He had to sit out a year. Imagine that now. He had to come here because of some NCAA things and sit out, couldn't even practice his first year here, and then developed into a first-round pick.
Yeah, no, and I don't know. I know all of them a little bit, not great, but I know this. I know they're all going to play in the NBA for 10-plus years, and I know a lot of teams, because of the guys and the people they are, have no problem putting them on their roster. And, and Andre Miller sat out his first year, which people forget about. And I think there's something to be said, like that chip on their shoulder, because they're unheralded, and I think that's been being in the NBA, a lot of the guys that have had that success are the guys that don't receive the attention, have that chip on their shoulder, and want to prove everybody wrong.
How weird was it for you as a coach in the NBA to still see Andre out on the floor playing? You're coaching against him when he played 19 years, Alex, in the NBA. It's an unbelievable career that he had.
Oh, and I might be biased, but Andre's probably, he has to be on the starting five of the all-time most underrated. Like, if you look at the career assists in the NBA, I believe he's 12th. And there's guys in the Hall of Fame behind him on that list, and statistically that aren't even close to him. Like Andre should be in the Hall of Fame. But we were just talking about that the other day when he got drafted by Cleveland. He led on not a very good team, he led the NBA in assists his rookie season in Cleveland. But yeah, like he's and nobody would have guessed it. But yeah, he's the best player I ever played with.
And maybe you make a case for the best to ever play here at the University of Utah. Certainly had a career that said that too. All right, let's bring it back around. You guys have your opener on Monday night against San Jose State. How much of Monday night is about the prep and the scout on San Jose State, and how much of it is really still about you guys and figuring yourselves out right now?
Well, I think that's combined, but we're playing to win. Like, I don't want to lose. Obviously, there'll be growing pains, but yeah, no, we're gonna. Winning is the goal. It's what great Majerus line. That's why they keep score, and I think the exhibition games, we found out a lot about ourselves, but now I think we combine those. Like, we want to get better. We have a better idea of the direction and how to win, how to put our guys in the best position possible. But yeah, no, we're preparing to win on Monday night.
I probably should have led with this, but we'll finish with it. What do you love most about coaching?
Oh, coaching. It's a good question. Because it was something I never dreamed about getting into. Coach Majerus, approached me to come into St. Louis, and I think, it's basketball. It's one of the things that I'm passionate about, and because of the coaches and people I've been around, I feel like I have a I'm confident in my knowledge of it. And, there's nothing in another Majerus line. There's nothing like being on a team, right? Like the amount of time you spend with each other. Coach K has the book, A Season is a Lifetime, I believe. But there's nothing like being on a team, because during the season you spend more time with each other than you do your families or girlfriend. And it's the relationships, winning and relationships. Those are the two things that I enjoy and that make it worth it to me.
Well, he's building a program that's going to be big on both those things, the relationships and the winning, and we'll see how things play out here against San Jose State coming up on Monday. Hey, thanks for doing this. You'll be able to catch Alex and I doing the coaches show all year long. We'll chat before and after games, but I'm really looking forward to see how you guys put all these puzzle pieces together starting on Monday night.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you.
The best insight on all things Utah athletics. It's the Crimson Corner Podcast.
Back on Crimson Corner, thank you, Alex Jensen, for taking a few minutes. I love Alex's approach. I love Alex's demeanor. I love everything about the approach he and his staff are taking with his basketball program and building it the right way. They're not cutting corners. They're not taking shortcuts. They're doing this thing the right way. And we'll get our first look at them coming up on Monday night. They play against San Jose State at 7 o'clock at the John M. Huntsman Center. Sean Mooney and I will have the radio broadcast for you on our flagship radio home, ESPN 700. It will be an ESPN Plus broadcast on TV with Joe Cravens and Chris Sylvester. San Jose State, they're coached by a former Colorado State and Nebraska head coach. That would be Tim Miles. They're picked 10th in the Mountain West Conference this year. Preseason polls don't always mean everything, but San Jose State's not traditionally been a basketball powerhouse. So Miles is going in there. He's reclaimed, he basically came in at CSU and got them back to where they needed to be, contending in the Mountain West. He went to Nebraska and did the same thing with Nebraska in the Big Ten. So we'll see if he can reclaim yet another project, and that's at San Jose State. We'll have that broadcast for you coming up on ESPN Plus. Utah plays 6 straight games at home before hitting the road and playing in Palm Springs for their MTE with Grand Canyon, Iowa, and Ole Miss. That's in later November, but 6 straight games at home before they hit the road. And like I said, and what Alex was saying is right. I've seen these guys play. I've seen them practice, and they're working right now on the rotations. They're also working through some injury situations. Obviously, Seydou Traore, not 100% right now. Babacar Faye out for the season. So they're still trying to figure out what they've got from a lineup situation. And that's what a lot of these early season games are going to be, including the game against San Jose State on Monday. But the one guy that I could tell you for sure is going to be a guy with the ball in his hand a lot is Terrence Brown. He's excelled in both the exhibition games. He's a guy that scored and ran a team at a high level at Fairleigh Dickinson. I would look for TB and also Don McHenry to be leaders in the backcourt, at least early on for the University of Utah. And then we'll go from there and see where everybody else kind of plays out. Choppa Moore, Ja'Kai Howard, James Okonkwo. We'll see how all these pieces begin to fit together. A guy that I like a lot, too, is Jake Patrick. He's the freshman from Germany. He is a sharp shooter. He can really knock them down. I think there's going to be a big role for Jake Patrick on this team as well. But again, it all begins on Monday night against San Jose State. And I mentioned the Utah women. They also begin on Monday, but they're earlier in the day. They're going to play it at 11 a.m. on Monday against Sioux Falls at the Huntsman Center. It's the elementary and middle school kids game. So if you're planning on going to that game, be prepared. There's going to be about 3,000 or 4,000 elementary and middle school age kids at that game to support against Sioux Falls. Gavin Peterson's team had a nice win on Monday night of this week against Western Colorado in their home exhibition game. So that'll be on Monday. And Gavin is in a little bit of the same boat, not quite the same boat Alex is in, because he doesn't have an entirely new roster. But what Gavin is dealing with is his Foundation 4 players that have been there forever. Jenna Johnson and Gianna Neepkins and Kennedy McQueen and Anish Vieta, they're all gone now. Although Jenna Johnson is now Jenna Ross and she's an assistant coach, but she's not playing. So he's got some good, talented pieces like a Maddie Wilkie and a Reese Ross and a Lonnie White who's returned and some really talented freshmen. But he's beginning to try to fit some of those pieces together as well. How do the freshmen mix with some of the veterans? Who steps up in some leadership roles? because they haven't really had to worry about that over the last 4 years with Neepkins and Johnson and Vieira and McQueen there. So they're figuring some things out too, but I'll tell you what, they're going to have a good early test coming up in about the third week of November. They have to go to Connecticut, not technically to Stores. They'll be going to where the Mohegan Sun is, but they'll have to play the number one team in women's college basketball, the UConn Huskies. So that'll be a good early test for them on the road coming up in a few weeks. A couple of other things from around campus this week. Final Utah soccer game coming up on Thursday night. It's a rivalry game against the BYU Cougars. That will be at Ute Field at 7 o'clock. If you can't make it out, ESPN Plus will have that. And then, of course, Utah volleyball at home this week, taking on Kansas State on Wednesday and UCF on Friday night. And, of course, everything leads up to Saturday. The ESPN Game Day folks will be in early, President's Circle. They'll be setting up on Friday, and then Saturday, the big show. And then the game at about 8:15 Saturday night against the Cincinnati Bearcats. So it'll be a fun week and another good fun broadcast today. Thank you to Alex Jensen for swinging by to talk some Running Ute hoops with us. Thanks to Nick Boulderjack as well for producing this thing today. As always, if you guys have questions, thoughts, suggestions about the podcast, feel free to shoot me an email. briley@huntsman.utah.edu. That's briley@huntsman.utah.edu. If you want to do us a favor, do us a solid, rate and give us a big thumbs up on whatever podcast platform you're listening to, either iTunes or Spotify or any of them. Rate us high, give us a good number and a good mark, and share with your friends. We love, we like to say sharing is caring. So share the Crimson Quarter podcast. So for Alex Jensen and Nick Boulderjack, I'm Bill Riley saying so long. We'll talk to you next week, and go Utes.
You've been listening to the Crimson Corner podcast with Bill Riley. Bill is back next week with the latest on Utes. Download previous Crimson Corner episodes on all major podcast platforms.